He saw her first as a flicker on the edge of his windshield, a figure pressed against the cold concrete of the overpass ramp, her hand cradling the curve of her belly. Rain had begun in hesitant drops, pattering on expensive leather seats, and the city's neon lights blurred into streaks of color. He slowed his black SUV, the engine's hum drowning out the distant thrum of traffic. He rolled down the window and called her name, though he didn't know it yet. She looked up, startled, rainwater dripping from the ends of her tangled hair. His heart, accustomed to board meetings and gala luncheons, clenched at the sight of her vulnerability. She was more beautiful than any model he'd ever courted, the soft roundness of her stomach illuminated by the headlights. He reached into his coat pocket and withdrew a crisp bill, the kind he usually handed to chauffeurs. She hesitated, glancing at her palm, then accepted it as though it were both a lifeline and a curse. He wished he could simply drive on, return to his life of certainty, but something tethered him to her presence. She was silent as he offered to buy her shelter and a warm meal. He spoke gently, voice low against the wind, explaining that money alone wouldn't solve everything, but perhaps it could help just enough. She shook her head, clutching the bill like a secret she wasn't ready to share. He insisted, slipping off his designer coat and draping it over her shoulders. The fabric smelled of cedarwood cologne and leather polish. She closed her eyes, letting the warmth seep into her skin, and for a moment, they stood as two unlikely companions in the rain. He glanced at her swollen belly, fingers itching to know her story, yet afraid to pry. The world beyond the underpass felt miles away, the city's pulse muted beneath the shelter of concrete. He led her to a nearby cafe that stayed open late, its windows glowing like beacons against the storm. She accepted a chair but kept her gaze fixed on the cup of coffee he ordered for her. Steam curled upward, dissolving in the chill air. He sat opposite, removing his gloves with deliberate slowness. The diner's patrons stared, an impeccably dressed man and a ragged woman, his hand hovering protectively near her own. He introduced himself as Daniel, though the truth of his name seemed irrelevant. She responded softly, calling herself Maria. She told him she'd come to the city seeking help, but her dreams dissolved into desperation when she lost her job, her apartment, and then the man she thought would stand by her. Tears leaked from the corners of her eyes, and she touched her belly, as if the child growing inside were a fragile hope she couldn't safely hold. Daniel listened, absorbing every word. Each syllable carved lines of empathy across his heart, the sterile routines of his life fading in their significance. He learned that Maria had once been a teacher's aide, passionate about guiding children toward brighter futures. She'd fallen in love with a stranger, a man who promised her forever, then vanished when the baby news arrived. Abandoned and without resources, she'd walked the streets, begging for coins to buy milk. Daniel imagined her journey in vivid detail. The nights curled up on stray mattresses, the days crouched by highway exits, strangers' pity casting her as both noble and pathetic. He felt shame for the world that allowed such injustice and guilt for his own complacency. He asked her to stay in a hotel, offering to cover every expense. She hesitated, fear flickering in her eyes. Who was he to offer such miracles? He reassured her, promising only kindness. When they arrived at the lobby, the clerk recognized Daniel's name, his reputation preceding him. A suite was prepared under Daniel's accounts, equipped with a nursery-sized crib and fresh flowers. Maria ran a trembling hand along the plush carpet, tears threatening again. Daniel watched, wondering if he'd crossed a line, but as he saw relief wash over her face, he knew he had not. That night, he sat by her door, listening to her soft snores through the wood. He thought about his life. Boardrooms, luxury cars, designer suits. He recalled a childhood of affluence devoid of warmth, where love was transactional and smiles were currency. He realized he'd built a fortress of wealth to shield himself from vulnerability. But vulnerability, he now understood, was the only path to true connection. His phone lay silent, missed calls from colleagues and investors. He ignored them. Morning light filtered through heavy drapes. Maria emerged, her hair damp from a quick shower. She wore one of Daniel's wool shirts, too large but comforting. He offered her breakfast on the room's balcony, the skyline stretching toward the horizon. They spoke of small things, the scent of rain, the warmth of coffee, the promise of a new day. He complimented her on her resilience. She smiled, a quiet expression that lit her whole face. The baby kicked, and Maria placed her hand over her abdomen. Daniel leaned over, pressing his palm gently against her bump. He felt a flutter beneath his fingers, the first touch of a life that belonged to both of them. As days passed, Daniel arranged prenatal care, hiring a private nurse and securing the best obstetrician. He transformed a spare bedroom into a nursery, handpicking a wooden cradle, painted in soft hues of yellow and gray. He read every book on childbirth he could find, his nights spent studying, prepared to support Maria in any way. Maria, once wary of his generosity, began to trust in the constancy of his devotion. She found solace in his unwavering attention. His eyes that never judged her past only invited her future. They took walks in the park, Daniel pushing Maria on a borrowed stroller, though the baby was months away from arrival. Passers-by gasped at the sight, a multimillionaire and a homeless mother-to-be strolling together, a vision of improbability. Whispers followed them, charity or madness. Daniel shrugged away opinions, content to hold her hand, to feel the warmth of her palm against his. Maria taught him patience as she taught herself to breathe through aches in her hips, to cradle the life inside her with care. He learned to cook simple meals, to laugh when he burned the toast, to let go of perfection. One afternoon while Maria rested in the nursery, Daniel stood by the window gazing at the crib. He recalled the moment he first saw her, a silhouette, in the rain. He felt gratitude for the twist of fate that led him off his usual route, for the courage that allowed him to stop. He touched the wooden slats of the cradle, imagining the tiny hands that would reach for him. He decided then that he would ask her to share not only his fortune, but his life. That evening, he found Maria in the suite's sitting area, reading a dog-eared romance novel she'd found in the hotel library. The pages were smudged with tears and coffee rings. Daniel knelt before her, heart pounding louder than any deal-closing moment he'd ever experienced. He spoke of love that transcended circumstance, of a future where they built a home together, where the child would know both abundance and authenticity. He told her he did not care about the judgments of society or the whispers of scandal. All he wanted was her. Maria's breath caught. She looked down at the diamond ring he held out, not ostentatious, but elegant, a circle of promise. She felt the weight of his words, heavier than any jewel, weight of commitment, of partnership, of shared dreams. She placed her hand atop his, tears streaming freely. When she spoke, her voice was calm. Yes. They married in a small ceremony by the riverbank, vows exchanged beneath an arch of wildflowers. Guests ranged from high-powered executives to street vendors who'd known Maria in her hardest days. They cheered as she and Daniel danced their first dance, a waltz that bridged worlds, their laughter mingling with the river's flow. Months later, in a sunlit hospital room, Maria held their daughter in her arms. The baby's cry rang out clear and strong, announcing her arrival. Daniel wept as he kissed the top of his daughter's head, marveling at the miracle life had delivered. Maria looked at him, radiant, the lines of fear replaced by lines of joy. They moved into a modest home they chose together, far from the opulence of his penthouse. Inside, the walls were painted in warm pastels, photographs of their journey lining the hallways. The living room held the same wooden cradle where he had first imagined fatherhood. Friends who doubted them saw the strength of their bond and understood that love, not status, was their greatest foundation. Years passed, and their daughter grew into a curious child, giggling as she chased butterflies in the garden. Daniel and Maria taught her the value of compassion, sharing meals with neighbors who once knew hunger, volunteering at shelters where mothers still begged for help. Their story became a legend in the city, a testament to unexpected kindness and the power of unlikely love. In quiet moments, Daniel would take Maria's hand and remember the night in the rain, the sparkle of her tears mixing with raindrops. He would thank the universe for guiding him to her, for teaching him that true wealth lay not in bank accounts but in open hearts. Maria would lean her head on his shoulder, grateful for a chance to rewrite her destiny. Their journey had begun on the roadside in a storm, but it continued in sunshine and in laughter, in challenges met together, in dreams, nurtured with gentle care. And always in every moment they held fast to the promise that had brought them together, that love in its purest form could transform beggar and millionaire alike.